The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor,
Good evening, good morning, and good noon, ladies and gentlemen.
and I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to Issue 1. Issue 1. Sam Bankman-Fried sent to jail for witness tampering. The FTX founder's bail was revoked ahead of his October trial. Yes, Sam Bankman-Fried made many calls to the New York Times and allegedly leaked his girlfriend's diary as if to make her the criminal and the fiend of the FTX saga. The judge wasn't having it and ordered Sam sent immediately to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Sam Bankman-Fried is now officially in jail awaiting his trial on charges in the FTX scandal. He also famously said that he hates a fellow YouTuber, CoffeeZilla, for his part in exposing Sam and embarrassing him when he was on his ridiculous interview tour, which still makes no sense to this day. Dan Eve, it's a little bit of Schadenfreude, but SBF is in jail. He still awaits trial. He is innocent until proven guilty, but now he is behind bars. What do you think?
It was a swift change to Sam Bankman, not so freed anymore. He's, there's obviously the witness tampering is fair game, right? At the end of the day, if he's kind of acting nefariously, trying to spoil the pot, right, and poison the cauldron of potential jurors' opinions, then it's that's a felony in itself. What's interesting is that he handed over what seemed like Google Docs, right? Because apparently, remember when they released this information initially, it was on the New York Times or where was it the New York Times or New York Post, whichever one, New York Times. They were saying that she had a Google Doc that had all of her kind of memoirs in, essentially about working with Sam Bankman-Fried. But obviously, these things have an audit history. So it later panned out that the people's or papers news outlets were saying that he actually manipulated the Google Doc, and it wasn't actually hers. There was a certain element of fakery going on. So I'll be interested to see if that's provable, right? Because surely Google have some sort of audit record on these things. Even if you turn off revision history, there's going to be something there. So maybe they catch him red-handed, having edited the document. I'm sure there's IP addresses linked to these audit records as well. Google's a data company, so they're going to have this information. It's not going to be, I think it's going to be quite cut and dry. Sorry. It's not going to be so easy for him to make this evidence all hazy and glazed over and confusing for people. There's going to be quite a lot of black and whiteness in the audit records. That said, that when the parts of if it is true, then she kind of incriminated herself to some levels of this, and whether or not it's right that he released that, it's obviously a bad thing. That releasing someone's personal diary, but obviously he's scrambling for his own defense, so he's gonna do anything dirty as anything. There's already people. There's both Ellison and the other co-founder of Alameda that are already doing plea deals. So he's what's it called, the prisoner's dilemma, right? So and he didn't go for it. He's claiming to be not guilty and trying to blame it on everyone else. So I think it's ultimately it's going to be relief for a lot of people that lost a huge amount of money, that he's in jail. Not just that, but for the people that have relatives that potentially took their own lives because of the money they lost in the FTX debacle. So it seems like he's going to find some good friends in prison. Although for sure, right? He's going to be in a cushy prison cell. He's going to have no. You don't think he's going to have? He's going to be.
Well, right now, while he awaits trial, he is in a not great prison. I
Oh,
agree.
right.
Once he's sentenced, he might be put in one of the white collar prisons. Certainly, he's not a violent inmate, but as of now, I believe he's in a not good prison. So,
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, that's not so good for him. Ooh.
It is interesting, though, after he leaked the diary, the articles began attacking Caroline, saying that she was out of her element, she was confused, and at the same time, she gave herself a 22, no, it wasn't 22 million, but she gave herself like
It
a
was 22
large bonus.
bonus, wasn't it? Yeah.
How much was the bonus? Like
I thought it was
200,000, perhaps?
no. There was like she gave herself a millions bonus.
All right, so she gave herself a million, but it was the kind of thing where I know that I believe Sam and his number two, who also went to like scout camp or something with Sam, they were making 3 or 4 times her salary. She
It was
was very much underpaid for a scammer in the business, but the articles managed to attack her for getting this bonus while all around her, everyone else was just, robbing the coffers dry and, not robbing, but officially being paid far more than she was. Sam has been pushing the line with this judge since the beginning. He famously, instead of just buying the NFL package, he used his VPN so he could use his existing NFL package that was valid in another country, but again showed the judge how easily he could bypass the restrictions and how just recklessly he could disguise himself online. We're talking about someone who used disappearing chats for business deals, who used emojis to approve loans and transfers, and who claimed that their lawyers instructed them to use this invisible ink to write their business documents in. So I think the judge had had enough. He's no longer at his parents' $1 million house in Stanford. He's no longer surrounded by dogs and his video games and his childhood toys. He's in legit jail. It is not good. And the official report we've received so far is that Sam has requested antidepressant medicine. And so he is likely in a very bad mental state. It is a surprise to see him finally shift and finally perhaps realize how badly he effed up. How many people, like you said, Dan, how many life savings, other things that he just destroyed these people's financial lives. And I remember him when he was doing that media tour and he was just so flippant about it. And so, like, it would have worked out, or maybe it was CZ's fault, or it was Caroline's fault, or it was the lawyer's fault. There was all this blame. He never seemed to understand the reality of how bad his company performed, how they mixed accounts, according to his interview with CoffeeZilla, and just the kind of incredible amateur hour that it was, and how it was such a disaster for so many people who didn't do their due diligence. They jumped in because, Joey was in and Freddie was in and Johnny was in. And I assume that Johnny and Freddie did their due diligence. And apparently no one checked this company out. Tom Brady signed with them. Taylor Swift famously claimed she didn't, but later we found out that she did sign with them. She wanted her 100 million as well. She's not some financial genius, as she claimed in some articles, which is a very odd choice on her team, because again, the truth always comes out. The truth about FTX came out. The truth about these other things will come out, and it's a sad story. And I don't want to dwell on it too much, but we did want to update our people here and discuss and say that yes, SBF is in jail awaiting trial. There are other large defendants in the U.S. who perhaps should also be in jail awaiting trial, who are doing similar things of baiting the judge, attacking the judge, even inspiring a woman in Texas who said that she was willing to kill the judge for the former president. But yes, eventually the alarm of justice and karma comes down, even on someone like Sam Bankman-Fried or perhaps the former president. And now SBF is in jail.
So it was actually 22.5 million she gave herself, and it was shortly after seeing that there was a $10 billion deficit. So yeah, she's definitely no saint, that's for sure. But maybe this whole antidepressants thing is, he seems like the sort of guy that thinks he's, these watching a lot of these crime things, and some of them that the ones that are so confident, they call it duping delight, right? Is it duper's delight? Where the criminal's being interviewed and they're kind of almost smirking, like, yeah, it's a shame. I hope they find her soon, or the body or whatever. And they're like, oh, that's the guy that definitely did it. So I think there seems like there's an element of duper's delight to Sam Bankman-Fried, and maybe this this whole antidepressants thing is just a really pathetic way of trying to feign, some form of weakness and sorrow that he gets. So that he gets some pity taken on him, basically. Again, like these, I watch too many crime documentaries, but the point where they have, it seems like there's an epiphany sort of moment where they get caught out and they start getting really upset. But a lot of them, the psychologists say this isn't them feeling sorry. Sorry, this isn't them feeling bad about what they've done. They're feeling no remorse about what they've done. They're just feeling bad about what the situation is they're in for themselves. He doesn't care about most other people. He didn't care about them when he was doing the rounds, when he was very flippant in his conversations, private conversations, and that were leaked about how he, really didn't care about the community that he'd built and how many people he'd screwed over, only himself and his own reputation. So I kind of think that it seems like this whole depression thing is kind of made up to maybe, he's that bad that he's like, oh, I'm going to trick the judge into making, him feel sorry for me by saying that I'm on antidepressants.
Well, and this isn't the first time that Sam has been linked to pharmaceutical drugs. FTX famously had a doctor on staff, and the doctor was giving out, I forget which drug they were for, but it was an energy type drug so that they could stay up longer and they
Yeah,
could trade more. In fact, no, it was a very weird one. It was like a kidney medication or some kind of like a specialized, I think it was an anti-dementia drug. And they were, of course, getting it prescribed legally and then taking it at their desk so they could trade longer or trade faster or code better, whatever it was. They were really in their own world. Remember, there's that famous story where he took a VC meeting and he was playing League of Legends the whole time, and the VCs were still impressed with him. They were still, I imagine it's like a teenager on the phone. He's like, yeah, uh-huh. And still these guys come out like, we should invest our millions of dollars in this man. So an incredible fraud, a fraud all the way to the end. And I do agree, Dan, he has a bit of that throwing it back in your face, like, oh, I stole money. Well, my girlfriend stole more money. Oh, I destroyed the company. My girlfriend destroyed the whole company. That
yeah,
similar to the former president, where he's like, oh, my family committed crimes such as taking billions of dollars from Saudi Arabia. Your family committed crimes taking millions of dollars for favors that don't seem to exist, non favors. But very interesting situation, very reminiscent of the other cases that we've seen in the media with the president and so forth. And like you say, I hope that people have some catharsis and some people can maybe feel that justice is working their way now. Certainly, I don't think they're going to see refunds from FTX. There's been rumors about restarting the company, which I think is a horrible and terrifying idea. They tried the same thing with Mt. Gox. Even Brock Pierce at one point was going to take it over and bring it back like a phoenix rising from the ashes, which is, I'm not sure what anyone wants, especially after the name has been destroyed. And I do hear the conspiracy theorists out there. They want me to mention that this is the same prison that Ghislaine Maxwell was sent to from the famous Epstein case, and that Epstein, of course, committed suicide. And I wonder if people believe SBF is going to do the same if he does have one of these realization moments of how badly he's screwed up, how many people he's screwed over, and how justice is coming for him. They have all of his financial records, they have all his computer records, they have all of the company records. It's going to be very difficult to defend in this case. Let's move on to the exit question. Will SBF be convicted? Predict the future, Dan Eve.
Yeah, so I think now that he's in prison for witness tampering, that's giving a lot more of a showing a lot more of a darker side to him, right? It may obviously be a bit of a what's the word? Like a panic sort of mode that he's gone into when he was sort of doing all these things to try and taint the case. But at the end of the day, it's showing his true colors and how he may have conducted himself in day-to-day business with FTX. So, it's becoming more and more likely he's going to be going down.
It's still such an amazing case. I remember watching that weird video on Snapchat where the guy says, this is SBF, he's a billionaire, he believes in effective altruism, and he still drives a Honda Civic, you know? He wears t-shirts just like you. He has fuzzy curly hair that he doesn't comb like Boris Johnson from the UK. Uh, and then now the pictures have all turned dark. We discussed it on our Bitcoin group about how he had now black eyes given to him by the photographers or the photoshoppers, and previously those same eyes were smiling at you from the cover of Fortune magazine, and it was plastered all over San Francisco, and he was the new king of finance. He had deals with Tom Brady and Gisele Bundchen and Shaquille O'Neal and other huge stars. He had a formulation of a deal with Taylor Swift. And now, like you say, he is in jail for witness tampering, for messing with the judge and with Caroline and publishing her diaries. And the evidence stacked against him does not look good. I agree, Dan. I think that SBF will be convicted and he will spend life in jail. Or, like they say, he might take care of himself. But we don't know what will happen in the future. Moving on to issue two. Issue two. Bitcoin ETF ruling expected this week, and with it a major jolt to crypto markets. The appeals court decision on Grayscale versus SEC is expected to arrive this week with profound consequences for the crypto industry. Is today today? Is it yet? Is it yet? The Bitcoin ETF we've all been waiting for. This isn't the BlackRock case. This is Grayscale versus the SEC. But it is possible they might allow Grayscale, they might allow BlackRock, they might allow all the ETFs. Thomas Hunt, what do you think about Bitcoin ETFs? Well, like everyone else, I'm completely exhausted of this topic. We started talking about it seemingly 8 years ago. We thought it'd be a shoe-in, a piece of cake. Having a Bitcoin ETF allows users to invest with their stock market money, which is pre-tax in the United States. If you're given it from your company where you work, you can then invest it, make a lot of money, and pay the taxes later out of your incredible proceeds. Allowing people to buy the Bitcoin ETF, they could buy Bitcoin without knowing what a private key is, without logging into Coinbase or having two-factor authentication, creating paper wallets or Trezor and Ledger wallets. It would be easier for people to invest in Bitcoin, although it does bring up the fear of fractional reserve Bitcoin as whether or not the companies actually own the underlying asset. Instead, we've been refused seemingly almost a dozen times by the SEC. They've said no because they didn't like the custodians. They've said no because they thought the price could be manipulated. And now Grayscale has pushed the point, suing the SEC, forcing them to explain their decision. Meanwhile, BlackRock, one of the largest investment groups in the world, has decided to create a Bitcoin ETF, creating more pressure on this industry. Many people believe that with an ETF, the price of Bitcoin would go up because the companies would then have to buy Bitcoin to hold it as the underlying asset, as well as other companies following in a domino effect. As you guys have no doubt seen today, the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum are both down about 4 to 5%, meaning that in my vision, this probably means that Grayscale is going to be denied the ETF and that the insiders already know and are dumping Bitcoin. Remember, buy the rumors, sell the news. And if there's any insiders out there, they probably already know and they're probably taking it down. If Grayscale is rejected, that still means BlackRock's out there. And I don't know if anyone says no to BlackRock. So whatever reason they find to reject Grayscale might not be there in BlackRock, but the price going down before the decision doesn't look good to me. Dan, Eve, what do you think about the Bitcoin ETF now, the price, and then the BlackRock ETF in the future?
Well, it certainly seems like someone's got some news on the situation, right? And I think you're totally right about the buy the rumor, sell the news. So this is what, nearly 5% or over 5% now drop. Seems very well timed, 5.59% over 7 days. So it seems pretty well timed with this decision. There's also been, obviously we have Grayscale. There's who else? There's ARK and BlackRock Fidelity. So obviously these decisions for ARK, BlackRock, Fidelity aren't going to be until 2024. So that kind of gives them perhaps a bit more of a time to mount a case for themselves versus Grayscale. But in terms of rejection from the SEC, the previous rejections have all been about Bitcoin specifically, and not for example, the structure of the ETF, as I understand, from reading about it. So the same thing that Black or Grayscale were being rejected on, which is about the general market manipulation of the Bitcoin price, which is out of Grayscale's control, is going to be the same thing that would be the rejection reason for BlackRock Fidelity. Now, in Europe, there's obviously a big difference between how it's being treated, and the first Bitcoin spot ETF's just been approved for Jacobi FT Wilshire, the Bitcoin ETF. Approved by Guernsey Financial Services Commission, the GFSC. So things are taking a different turn over here, and even though whilst there's rumors that one ETF has been rejected by the US, one has been definitely approved in Europe. It's a shame that wasn't enough to kind of counter the potential FUD news panic selling that we've seen happening. So who knows? Maybe Grayscale do actually. I think it's meant to be this week, right? So it's by tomorrow, the latest that they get a decision. Who knows? Maybe it is just a general market stutter, and Grayscale do get approved, but it's seeming, I think, less and less likely by the sources. But wasn't it only last week that Saylor was saying? No, it wasn't Saylor. It was Novogratz that was saying that he had a friend of a friend of a friend was saying that the BlackRock one's definitely going to be approved. I don't think he commented on the Grayscale one. Maybe he didn't because he knew himself, and so, but that would have been probably the more pertinent information, right, to be talking about. If you're talking about BlackRock's ETF being approved, you'd also mentioned about the decision coming next week, so maybe he was in the know as well. But as for general spot ETFs, it's good. Well, at least if you think it's good news for Bitcoin, at least from Europe's side of things, there's more of a stamp of a seal of approval that Bitcoin is a recognized asset class. So whether or not you think Bitcoin ETFs are a good or a bad thing, for normies, it opens up a huge market for them to get involved. And that's generally that's a positive. That's one of the positive things. Obviously there are negatives to having a Bitcoin ETF. But the other positive thing, right, is that they need, if they're spot ETFs and they're going to be holding custodians, they're going to need to buy it from somewhere. So there's going to be surely some big buy movements happening here, there, and everywhere, whilst these ETFs are starting to stockpile their Bitcoin to sell to investors.
Novogratz in his call famously said, "Not if, when," and he got us all excited again about the ETF. There was an earlier ETF, Dan, I think by Gemini, aka the Winklevoss brothers, where it was rejected because of the structure they proposed. I think that the Winklevi were holding the asset, they were determining the price of the asset, and it was just too much in one basket. It was all being determined by one company. These other ETFs, we've seen them pretty much as a rule use Coinbase as the holder, then someone else to determine the price, and then they sell the ETF asset and make all the profits. So it is interesting to see how, like you said, Amsterdam has approved it, but the United States has not. Moving on to the exit question, will the Grayscale versus SEC decision allow the ETF? Thomas Hunt, I think not. I agree with Dan. I think that the price has gone down in advance because of, unfortunately, insiders do know, and they do know this would be a bad decision, a bad outcome for Bitcoin. I think the SEC will find some kind of ridiculous technicality and deny the ETF. But again, I think that the BlackRock ETF is the bulldozer here. I think that they're going to come in and they're going to clear away all of these little wishy-washy things about Bitcoin or the price or the markets being manipulated. I think they have a better research division, a better legal division. They have more money. They have more assets under management. I do not think they'll shut down the BlackRock ETF. but I think we're still too soon for Grayscale or for Kathy Ark and Ark Investments, for the Winklevi, for all of these other people who have tried and presumably failed for the ETF. Dan, Eve, what do you think? Will they approve the ETF?
No, I think it's no. I think the markets know something, and yeah, I think Novogratz maybe. Well, obviously, he can't say that it's going to be rejected, but I think he would have had something positive to say if he'd have heard, the undertones that they've got a chance of winning. So I think sad days. Although they are Gemini Grayscale. As of today, we're hiring, so they're hiring someone on the. I think it was on the legal team or something like that. They were hiring, so maybe they're optimistic in themselves. It was hiring for a senior associate of ETFs, so that's quite optimistic on their part. So as of 7 hours ago, they released that job description and started looking. So maybe it is going to happen, and this mini crash is just another run of the mill, little panic sell triggered by a bunch of other factors that we're not we haven't quite pieced together yet, or retrospectively blamed on it.
Well, you know what they say about poker. If you can't spot the mark at the table after an hour, the mark is you. And unfortunately, I think we're the marks, and Bitcoin and Ethereum are the marks this time. We're getting knocked down by this. The long, boring price of 29K is now a memory, and a wistful and wishful memory, as we fall into at least 28 or 27 at the time of this show. Who knows? We might see 25. I don't know if we'll see 20. I'm not a big chart guy or anything, not predicting the future here. But I'm going to agree with Dan. I think the Grayscale gets shut down again. No ETF for you. And we wait for BlackRock. Moving on to issue 3, Coinbase wins approval to sell Bitcoin and Ethereum future products in the US. An interesting reversal from the ETF discussion. They've once again allowed future products. Still remain not a fan of future products. They kind of allow you to bet against Bitcoin or to bet against Ethereum, not a way to support Bitcoin and Ethereum as we would see if we saw a spot ETF. However, to see Coinbase get approval for anything in the US is a reversal of their recent fortunes and is presumably in some way good news. I don't know. Dan, Eve, are we excited that Coinbase is going to sell Bitcoin and Ethereum futures in the United States?
Well, one thing about this is it is a bit of a contrast to the recent battles with SEC. The SEC, aren't they suing Coinbase currently? So for selling unlicensed, I suppose that they're obviously different arms of the business, right? But it shows that if they are approving Coinbase on one hand for being legit and following the due process, and then suing them on the other hand over something that they've literally begged to be regulated over, it just seems really strange that they would that they would be just doing this dual kind of ping pong of lawsuits and requests for more licenses. This does obviously open up Coinbase to a lot more institutions, right, and a lot more large scale trading. So it's obviously very good for Coinbase. But at the same time, I think they're still quaking in their boots about these other kind of ongoing lawsuits. Then again, Gensler did say that he kind of mocked crypto, didn't he, last week or the week before, saying, "Oh, this crypto stuff, yeah, that could just go on the back burner. It's not important compared to the AI stuff that's going down right now. Crypto's nothing." So maybe you'll see the SEC take more of a lax approach. Maybe it's a good thing that it takes the AI stuff takes Gensler's attention and the SEC's attention off of crypto, and they just start rubber stamping stuff for the sheer hell of it, dropping lawsuits because they've got what they believe to be bigger fish to fry. But obviously, but AI is a huge thing. But the monetary policy of the world is pretty big. I don't think one quite dwarfs the other. To be honest, I think they're both very extremely important issues to be dealing with right now. But what everyone wants is, certainly from the US based companies, is they want no gray areas. They want clarification. They want to be operating on the right side of the law and the right side of the SEC and all the other regulatory bodies. So maybe we'll see this open up now with the certainly Bitcoin, the ETFs being pushed by BlackRock. Will take a lot of pressure off of of general Bitcoin regulation, because all these politicians who are rubbing shoulders with everyone in BlackRock will be getting their palms crossed with gold in order to make sure that Bitcoin gets a bit more of an easy ride.
I agree, Dan. I do think it's a major sea change for Coinbase, who had been antagonizing the government, suing them, angrily claiming that they could not get clear regulation. As we've all seen, they have been indeed begging for regulation, trying to work with the regulators. They're listed on the stock market. They've been our above board exchange, certainly Kraken and other people as well doing the same. But it does just show what a good company Coinbase is, and that they can do more than one thing at a time. The department that succeeded with these Bitcoin and Ethereum futures is a successful department. The other departments are busy suing the government. And remember, there was even that story a little while ago where Coinbase registered a new company as like Coinbase International in the Bahamas or something like that. And it looked like they were getting ready to compete with Binance for that sweet, lawless international dollar, which is bad for all the regulators and bad for all of the traditional, let's go with the normal way people. So it is good and interesting to see them still working with the government. Perhaps they win their lawsuit, perhaps they return to the fold of regulated exchanges, and of course they're still on the stock market. But yes, I think it's a positive thing. I still don't like futures. I still think it's a way to bet against Bitcoin. And I think that approving the futures without approving the spot ETFs, again, weighs negatively on Bitcoin. Perhaps one of the reasons that we went down from the all-time high and went down so quickly was the approval of other futures ETFs that, again, allow people to only bet against Bitcoin, not to bet in support, as we would with a normal ETF. Moving on, check out worldcryptonetwork.com. We've got 3,068 videos. We've got more than 3 months, 16 days, and 14 hours of content, and it's all free at worldcryptonetwork.com. We've been doing these shows for 9 years, 8 months, and 3 days since our first video. Check it out at worldcryptonetwork.com. Issue 4. Bitcoin hits all-time high in Argentina following Javier Milei's shocking win. Since the crypto-friendly outsider was elected to the South American nation's top post, the price of Bitcoin has soared in Argentina. A new government has been elected in Argentina, and they support Bitcoin. Dan, Eve, what do you think about this sudden turn for the South American government and its effect on the larger Bitcoin market?
Well, it says that the all-time Bitcoin hits an all-time high in Argentina, but so surely, I suppose they've had crazy inflation, but I was thinking surely it was an all-time high when it was like 68,000, but maybe their currency's done that bad since.
Well, it's never too late for someone like Sam Bankman-Fried to jump in there and start arbitraging that price down. I remember that SBF famously started by traveling to Japan, using his contacts and connections to arbitrage the price, essentially making free money if you have accounts in both countries. If the price is higher in one country, you buy in one, send to the other, sell for more, and repeat the cycle. Presumably someone could do the same in Argentina. Not talking out of school here, but yes, anyone could do it.
Yeah. Also, actually, yeah, I think it looks like since the Bitcoin all-time high, it's the Argentinian peso is like it's been savaged. I think it's a third of its value since beginning of 2021. So that's obviously why it's an all-time high, because it's lost so much value compared to the dollar and other currencies. They've got this new guy, right? He looks like an Oasis fan. He's got like an Oasis type haircut, that band, the UK band. It looks like an indie sort of, there he is. Looks like an indie band singer from like the 90s or something. But he's I saw a few interesting videos of him today, like going, inflation, no bullshit, so and so bullshit, endless money printing bullshit. He's being called like a an ultra right winger though, right? Is that the sort of the thing that's being labeled to him at the moment? He's
It says here that he's a far right populist,
far
which is again a shockingly new statement, as populists have generally been liberal, generally been for the people, whereas right wing is generally more of a stronger government, more of a government that might support corporations, such as a fascist government. But it also says here that he's a 52-year-old shaggy haired economist with a penchant for rock music and leather jackets. He's called central banks a scam and sung Bitcoin's praises for its finite supply. He's also a libertarian, as it says here. It says also that the annual inflation in Argentina is 113%, the highest in the region after Venezuela. So they do need help with their currency. They might be helped by using Bitcoin. And again, unlike the dictator in El Salvador, he has now been popularly elected without having to use violence or the threat of violence, such as bringing armed troops into the Congress before the vote or getting rid of the Supreme Court, as the dictator in El Salvador did.
Yeah, well, it sounds like he's got the public following behind him, right? Even if he's an extremist or whatever he's being labeled as. But the problem is everyone who's not like really left is just called an extreme right winger nowadays. So the term's a bit loosely thrown around, I think, unfortunately. Some words just lose their meaning as time goes on because they get bandied about too much. So he doesn't seem like he's kind of, his economic policies seem quite interesting. And obviously he's very positive about Bitcoin. But although he's been called kind of smeared with this extreme right wing sort of thing, there's no kind of evidence to it other than just saying he's extreme right wing. So it's just kind of plod the name on there because he's not a socialist or something maybe. Well, it's going to be good for Bitcoin if it happens. It's obviously the Argentine economy is a huge amount bigger than El Salvador's. So this is, the population of Argentina is obviously a lot bigger as well. There's a lot more potential, I think, for the impact on the rest of the world if Argentina allows Bitcoin as legal tender. So whether or not he is a crazy right-wing fascist dictator or not, the thing is that he likes Bitcoin. So everyone likes a dictator, a fascist dictator, as long as they're pro-Bitcoin.
I agree, Dan. I'm also pretty positive on this one. Unlike El Salvador, as we said, he is elected. He's a Bitcoin fan, and we'll see what he can do. If they have inflation at 113%, they have a terrible currency. Perhaps he could offer Bitcoin as a secondary currency, maybe even phase out the primary currency, although that would be very dangerous for their government. Remember, Bitcoin has its own issuance schedule. If Argentina needs to buy new weapons for war, or they need to buy new farming materials, or fix the government or fix the environment after the flood or something like that, they can no longer just print money. So that would change their economy, but it might help the people if their money was not constantly being inflated. The kind of thing we've discussed before, you get paid on Friday and you have to spend all your money buying whiskey and toilet paper and other things that are useful in the future, because by the time you get to Monday, you will have lost, or Monday, you will have lost another 30%. So I don't know very much about Argentina or the background here. So obviously we're not on the ground in this situation. But from the outside, it seems positive. It seems positive for Bitcoin. Once again, just like in El Salvador or other places that use Bitcoin, or terrorists or Iran or whatever country it is, Bitcoin has no opinion on who uses it. Bitcoin can't control who celebrates it, who talks about it. But in this case, he's democratically elected and he's an economist and he likes the same things we like. He likes trashing the central banks, wearing leather jackets and listening to rock and roll. So maybe this works out well for Argentina. I'm certainly rooting for them. And I think we'll cover this story more in the future. I think we'll see what he does. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very fine line, isn't it, with Argentina, the situation there, and adopting Bitcoin compared to El Salvador, because El Salvador doesn't have its own currency. It was piggybacking off the US dollar, whereas one of the things that he's saying is, about the savagely decreasing power of the Argentine peso. But if he goes too hard in Bitcoin, then that in itself could make the country lose another country lose face in the Argentine peso. So it has to be quite a big phased out, long-winded phased out approach, because you don't want to devalue your own currency, because then it means that you're even more powerless to buy Bitcoin, which you want to use as a reserve currency. So it's a lot more of a different situation over there, obviously. And it's a lot. I think he has to play this game a lot more delicately. But going back on El Salvador, the positive news from there is that the bond has over 70% up in 2023, which is Nayib Bukele is very happy about this. Obviously, they managed to paid off their $800 million debt and still have money left over laughing. So that's very good from that respect. And obviously, if the more we kind of move towards the bull run next year, that's going to look a lot more positively for Bukele. Whether or not we do drop and continue dropping now back to the sort of 20 levels, maybe even lower, I don't know. It doesn't seem like we're going to hit that. Usually that sort of peak trough in the price comes about 15 months before the halvening, and what we are 7-8 months away now, eight months away maybe from the halvening. So it's really not that far round the corner. So based on historic prices, there shouldn't really be that much of a drop coming around the corner that's going to put El Salvador back on the back foot again, feeling scared. But the main thing is they paid off that $800 million debt, which everyone was, all the pundits were laughing about and mocking El Salvador, saying that they took this gamble on Bitcoin. Well, it's paid off, as most gambles on Bitcoin do, as long as you hodl and don't sell, right?
It was disappointing, Dan, to see all the positive news, such as the PayPal stablecoin and other people saying how high Bitcoin was going to go, even Novogratz saying not if, but when. We couldn't get the price of Bitcoin to move. It seemed it used to move 5, 10, maybe even 25% after we had some good news. But of course, we have a little bit of bad news, and perhaps, as we're saying here, if there is an ETF rejection, if the insiders know about it, but we don't know, that would be more bad news, and bad news always seems to move the market, unlike good news. Something about like the bad news travels around the world faster than the good news can get out of bed, something like that.
That's what
But yes,
I was going to say. Years ago, I wanted to make a site, and I wish I did it, but it was going to be called the bearer of bad news.com or something like that. And it was a site that would list any bad news, but as a stock alert, right? Because bad news moves the markets more, as you just said. So things like when the Boeing had to ground all their aircraft because of the battery issues and stuff like that. Boom! Quick short sell on there and make a bit of money from the bad news alert. But I never did it. I wish I did.
Also, I agree with you, Dan. He needs to be very careful as he starts to endorse Bitcoin, because if his people have savings in their accounts in Argentinian pesos and he starts promoting the Bitcoin, he could wreck their savings. So even people who are in a decent or good state in Argentina, in economic state, could be wrecked and destroyed if he acts too quickly, as much as Bitcoiners, I'm sure, want him to act quickly and are excited to see what he does. Hopefully he'll take a nice, slow, and steady approach to his changes. Moving on to issue 5, screen share button has disappeared. Thanks, Zoom. Okay, it's back. Back to issue 5. German programmer could lose $200 million if he can't find his Bitcoin keys. Stephen Thomas risks losing 7,002 Bitcoin, currently worth $220 million, after forgetting the password to his encrypted hard drive. He has 2 guesses left and could have sold the Bitcoin for $500 million if he had access to them at the peak price. We've talked before about people losing their keys, but I'm not sure we've ever talked about 7,002 Bitcoins. It says, according to the article, that he earned the Bitcoin by creating a short animation video in 2011. That may or may not have been the We Use Coins animation, a classic Bitcoin animation. I'm not sure if that's the story or not, but he created an animation. He was paid a phenomenal 7,002 Bitcoin, and now the keys are locked in his hard drive, but has forgotten the password. If he guesses twice and fails, he will be locked out. Dan, Eve, what do you think about this story and the general idea of people losing Bitcoin because they forgot their password?
Oh, it's absolutely it's savage, right? That's one of the bad things. Oh, okay, well, not the bad thing, but it's if you lose your Bitcoin, it's bad. That you can have this be sat on this absolute wealth of money that you can't actually, or value, should I say, that you can't actually access because of something as silly as you forgot your password. And I'm not an advocate of, definitely not of keeping your coins on exchanges, because there's been so many exchanges that have gone down, from FTX and all these other ones, Blue Arrow, 3 Arrow Capital, all of them, all of these, these are all warning shots about keeping your coins on exchanges. Every single hack that's happened, every single insider event that's where Bitcoin and crypto has been drained. But at the same time, there's for me, I have a hardware wallet, but or do I don't actually have anything. I don't hold any Bitcoin or anything like that, but you can see why people want to actually keep it in a third party service of some sort, because then they trust the other people not to lose it more than they trust themselves to actually lose it. So this whole not your keys, not your coin doesn't fit everyone. And whilst I'd always recommend that people should always hold their own coinage, there's always going to be those people who want to use a third-party service. Even people that are crazy enough to use the Ledger, the new Ledger kind of Shamir secret style sharing of private keys amongst different third parties, because at least it gives them an opportunity to have their cryptocurrency back. But then if they lose it, but then they're still suffering the same issue that these third parties might not be trustworthy. Two of them could somehow gang up, and if it's a 2 of 3 Shamir secret, then they've got access to all your coins. So what's crazy about this is that he's limited. He's now limited to his 2 guesses. Right, he's had a certain number of guesses. If I had this hard drive, surely you'd find someone who's like, I don't know, a hacking team or something like that you would be able to, you'd be able to access that information somehow. I mean, it'd be interesting to find out what the architecture of this kind of hard drive is, because they don't go into it, whether it's just kind of a BitLocker type thing, or whether it's something more advanced than that that he was using. But certainly I'd be trying to make friends with all sorts of hard drive recovery type people, because obviously you've only got 2 attempts left on your private key. But if you can extend that somehow by either hacking the hard drive in some form of way, that's the odds of that are much better than using your final 2 guesses, right? And I've had that before, like, even if it's just something that doesn't last very long, it's still very frustrating when you do 3 guesses and it's wrong, and then the next guess is 2-minute wait, and then the next guess is a 10-minute wait, and then 4 minute, and then it goes 8 minutes, 16, 32-minute wait, and soon enough you're on 7 trillion minutes, and you're sat there going, did I use this? Did I try this password already? I swear it's this one, but what if I? What an awful situation that having to rack through your brain for all these passwords. So it's quite sad, really. Maybe there's one way of doing it. This isn't how I've done it, obviously, but to have an insanely complex password that isn't ever going to change and will always be there. You just need to reference the source. Would be to use something like a smart contract address, right, or something like that. You could use like a or your passcode for your hard drive could be something that you don't need to remember the exact thing that it is, and the characters, and whether you've used capitals, non-capitals, put an exclamation mark at the end or anything like that. You just know it's, for example, the USDT contract address on Ethereum, which has got enough characters that it would be completely unhackable within many lifetimes. But at the same time, it's not something that you're going to forget the nuances of how you typed it, whether you put a full stop in the middle, that sort of thing. Crazy.
Well, it certainly must be a complicated encryption. My first idea is, of course, make a copy of the hard drive. Then you could guess your next two guesses on that copy. There must be something, I presume, in the hard drive where it phones home to some kind of server that's keeping track of the guesses. Obviously, then why not create a fake version of that server, put the hard drive in the fake environment?
Yeah.
Many passwords have been hacked in the past where people are able to separate the password file, then try a million guesses against the password file. I agree, Dan, he should reach out to the greatest computer security experts in the world. Even 10% of the 7,000 Bitcoin, 70 Bitcoin would be an incredible reward for anyone, as well as the story, the notoriety, the publicity for your company, if you are the one that could save this man and his Bitcoins. Other than that, I go and maybe he should get a hypnotist. Maybe he can envision and have a past life restoration of what he typed that day. And beyond that, I think in the past, I've had passwords and things where you type like four, but you type the letter four or the number four instead of the word four. Maybe he made some kind of a switch, or God forbid, if he typoed, if he typed, TAKL instead of TALK, he could have typed it backwards and they would never know. It's so horrible, such an awful thing, and such a small little mistake. And again, it's just so bad that he put all his Bitcoins into one hard drive. If he put them into two hard drives, Johnny unencrypted and Johnny encrypted, he could have very much enjoyed the 3,500 Bitcoins, which is more than enough for a lifetime of spending. Let me know in the comments or the chat if you have an idea on how he could crack this Bitcoin. Maybe it'll be helpful to other people. I know at one time I had mistyped my password and I talked to someone else and they said, well, maybe you typed it like this. And I tried it, and sure enough, I had typed it the way that my friend suggested, and I was able to get back, obviously not 7,000 Bitcoin, but my couple $100 or whatever returned to me. But still, how did I mistype that? And how did I mistype it twice? Because, these password forms are always like, secure your password twice. And yeah, just such a tragic story, such an incredible amount of wealth. And like the article said, oh, yes, it was worth $500 million a few years ago, and now it's 200 million. But imagine the nightmare if Bitcoin keeps going up, and we're talking 750, we're talking a trillion, we're talking 4 or 5 trillion. This poor guy, emotionally, I don't know how he's going to deal with that. It's going to be very difficult.
Yeah. Maybe it's so. Some of these they have. They said it was a hard drive, but there's also kind of drives that have built-in encryption on it. So maybe it was something like that. These military. I've got a few of them. They've got like military-grade encryption, and it's actually on the drive itself, kind of like a hardware wallet, but not quite a hardware wallet. So, but yeah, you think somehow you could clone it, right? But then what if the module is like the security chip in there? You can't just clone that part, right? You could clone the data, but you can't clone that specific part of the.
Well, and what if there's a backdoor? Like we all know how security professionals and hackers work. Maybe he could go to the company that made this hard drive and he could bribe them with a 10% reward, and maybe they have a backdoor, or they have a test mode or a demo mode, or maybe a rogue programmer who
God
wrote the code originally who can get them in there. Yeah, the password is secret sex magic. That some kind of Johnny in backdoor password. Yeah, so I don't know. Something needs to be done though. And again, maybe he can get military help. Maybe he could get spies or hackers or the greatest minds in the world, which again, you worried they just steal the whole thing for themselves. But if you could get an honest one that was willing to take a 10% or hell, 20%, who cares? He has no access to it. It'd be an amazing thing. All
So
right, Dan, I've got a good exit question for you. Who would you rather be? The guy with two guesses left for his 7,000 Bitcoin who has the hard drive, or the guy who lost the hard drive in the dump and wants to dig through all the trash to even just find the hard drive?
I'd definitely go with the guy with, well, number one, the amount is like the difference is in the billions, right? I think the guy lost his hard drive. Even now, it's like 200 million or something, like lost Bitcoin in dump in the landfill, 185 million, and that was in August 4th, 2022. So it's probably even less than that now, I think, based on the price. So I'd rather have the billions that's lot. Was it billions? It was billions, wasn't it? 703. Oh no, it's two. What? Hang on a sec. 210 million. What was the amount? Sorry, where's it gone?
I think it's probably going to be neck and neck. I
Oh,
don't know. I think
200
they
million.
might
No,
have
it
it.
is. Sorry, it is.
Huh.
Yes, it's neck and neck. Where did I get the billions from? Anyway, I would rather be that guy because at least you have the hard drive, right? And there's all sorts of sorcery that could be done with the actual unit. But being able to having to be able to, well, first of all, if he finds the hard drive in the landfill, now number one, it could be damaged. I know the discs might not be damaged, but he might have had BitLocker on himself and not and then has the same password issue that the current one has. So you'd be pretty crazy to be leaving Bitcoin on an unencrypted drive and just throw it in the trash. So yeah, I'd rather be the German programmer than the Welsh guy that lost it in the dump.
I agree, Dan. The hard drive in the hand is worth more than the hard drive in the dump. Although we could say I don't think the hard drive in the dump is encrypted. I think that he was not very technical and maybe had a post-it on it or something and threw out the wrong hard drive. Whoopsie. So if they do find the hard drive and if it is intact, if it hasn't been smashed by years of being in the dump, the platter's ruined beyond repair, which again, take them to the greatest hard drive experts in the world, use microscopes or whatever they do and try to get that data off there because who knows, he could get that money back. It would be an incredible story. But I would love to see these guys at a panel at a Bitcoin conference going back and forth, although I don't know that they'd ever talk about it publicly. It's such a depressing and kind of world destroying event because they had the great wealth. And then let's also agree that if they did have access to it, they would have sold it when it doubled. The fact that they've held it so long is part of the mistake of them losing it. That's compounded the problem. It's made it worse. Where they said, "Oh, I lost 1 million. Oh, I lost 10 million. Oh, I lost 100 million." And if Bitcoin keeps going up, it will be worse and worse for these guys emotionally. I don't know how they're going to deal with that. Again, maybe hypnotist, maybe get them to forget about it. Kind of eternal sunshine of the spotless mind. If only they could erase parts of their brain. But I guess they'd go in and try to get the password first before they'd erase his brain if they had that technology. But yes, both of them are just in an awful, awful situation. I wouldn't wish upon anyone, but I do wish them the best. I hope they find the hard drive, and I hope that they find a way to crack this one open, and that we get to hear about it. And this guy gets to spend some sunny days in Spain or whatever he would want to do. Now, Dan, as we reach the end of the show, it's time to predict the future. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher or lower this time next week?
Oh, I said up last week, but I'm usually always wrong. So, but I'm going to say okay. I'm going to say down so that it goes up.
Even I am pessimistic this week. The sudden 4% drop, not presumably not getting the ETFs as we've predicted on this show. I'm going to also say down, which is a very rare bear market. I'm pretty much always saying Bitcoin goes up. There's only 21 million. What the heck are you thinking about? But let's ask the true source and authority of all things, the online Magic 8 Ball, our good friend. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher? It's a yes or no answer. Here we are. It is certain. The ball has predicted up, which being 4% or 5% down already, maybe there's nowhere we can go but up. Once again, the Bitcoin predictor ball is the source of all truth in Bitcoin. You should all follow it, just like you follow the men with the triangles. who said it was going to 1200 and it never did, and who put out two tweets and then delete one, and put out two tweets and delete one, and put out two videos and then delete one. All the magic where they always tell you the price is going up unless it goes down. Oh, it's a great business to be in. But Dan, we're running out of time. Do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
God, I have no idea. I'm always unprepared for this. Nothing much happens. Prediction. My prediction is, what have we talked about? Jolt, Sam Bankman-Fried, witness tampering. I reckon. Oh, I think something sad's going to happen to Sam Bankman-Fried in jail. I don't want it to. I wouldn't wish harm on anyone specifically, but I think he's going to wind some people up in jail. He seems like he's one of those characters that would piss people off by being really smarmy about stuff, and that he might make some not very nice friends.
Similar to the German programmer and the guy who lost his hard drive in the dump, it's as if Sam Bankman-Fried, if he didn't have bad luck, he'd have no luck at all. So yes, I don't think it looks good for him in prison. The sudden cry for depression, anti-depression medicine, was very sad. It was very sad to see it publicized. Obviously, he's lost people's life savings. He's lost people's fortunes. He personally hurt Tom Brady's feelings. So he's definitely going to get some payback for that. Karma is a bitch, as they say. But I wish him the best in prison. And I think it's also hilarious the way he spoke out against CoffeeZilla, which again, it was his own mouth that got him in trouble. His own mouth said that allegedly, according to the CoffeeZilla show, that he was mixing customer funds from the very beginning, which we all know, financial people, is a no-no. My story of the week, I just want to thank my friends in the north of France who hosted me the last couple of days. We had a great time. We went to Chantilly Chapeau. I went to Saint Germain Chapeau today. It's great to be touring here in Europe. Also, of course, a shout out to Majorca Blockchain Days, the great conference that convinced me to start this trip and to get out here again. It's great to be touring, to seeing museums and old buildings and things that I like to see. So it's very fun to be here. I want to thank you guys for joining us on a special Thursday edition. We're having trouble fitting it in on Friday with the traveling schedule and such. Apologies that we couldn't have more panelists here today, but we did have Dan. Thanks, Dan, for showing up, coming through in a pinch here. Be sure to give us a thumbs up down below. Say hello in the comments or the chat. We appreciate you guys being here, and we look forward to next week, where we'll find out if the Bitcoin price went up and if the ETF was approved. But until next time, bye-bye.